I am quite sure that most of you have already heard the name of Vivian Maier. This French-American babysitter with a passion for photography. She photographed the life in the streets of New York and Los Angeles, and herself in these contexts, as well as her in her private rooms. So she is both a street photographer and a self-portrait photographer. Now she's widely known, but she died anonymously and penniless. No one ever saw one of her pictures while she was alive. After her death, all her stuff was sold in an auction, and these materials ended in the capable hands of a person who recognized the value of these films. And now, a story is known all around the world. So, with her help and inspired from a couple of her pictures, we will try to make a small journey in this fascinating world. I say fascinating because humankind has been fascinated by its own image since the beginning of humanity. As many myths tell us, and as many discoveries in ancient caves prove, we can affirm this. In this case, I think of self-portraits as a way to leave a record of our own existence. On the other hand, in ancient art and in ancient mythology, images were considered powerful, and in a certain sense, almost to fear. Just think about the pathological love for his own image that brought Narcissus to death. Or the story that says that the ancient sculptor Phidias was accused of impiously portraying himself and Pericles on the shield of a statue. Only in the medieval age, artists start to portray themselves in their artworks. Let's think of the Italian Piero della Francesca, for example. And then with the Renaissance, they started to become more common, until we reached great painters like Rembrandt or Van Gogh that made the self-portrait a real artistic field, with relevant psychological implications. When we come to the history of photography, we have to admit that almost at the beginning of its history, the temptation for photographers to capture their own image has been irresistible. For example, the first known self-portrait was shot by Robert Cornelius in 1839, so just a few years after the invention of photography. Since then, many ways and techniques have been developed for this genre of photography. But instead of focusing on technique, we might want to build a fruitful and healthy relationship with our own image first. It's very common and natural, less and less nowadays, to be honest, to be embarrassed in front of a camera. Even if you are alone and you do not intend to share your pictures. A thing that I suggest to do, not sharing too often your pictures. So it's also very common not knowing how to start an exercise like this. Therefore, we can find inspiration in the pictures that we have already seen. And this is something that we can do often. Getting inspired by other photographers, or by the films, the movies that we see, or by literature, or whatever the source might be. As Pablo Picasso once said, good artists copy, great artists steal. If he said that, I think we can allow ourselves to take inspiration from some pictures of Vivian and Maier. Of course, we need to know that there are three main ways of taking a self-portrait. We can point the camera directly on our body or parts of our body, or we can use a mirror. We will soon see some pictures of Vivian doing this. Or we can place the camera on a tripod, or somewhere else, use a remote control or a timer, and be the subject of our photo. Getting inspired doesn't mean simply to copy something that we think we like. It means analyzing a piece of work, trying to understand what is significant in that image, trying to maintain that, and maybe change something to make it personal and new. In a single word, we elaborate, a picture in this case. And this will bring not only a source of inspiration on our photography, but it also pushes us to explore photographic solutions. And this is definitely good practice for us. So let's have a look at some self-portraits of Vivian Maier. Here it's easy to see that all these pictures are very recognizable in their style, but they're also very different. I personally think that Mrs. Maier did a great job in exploring her image and in situating herself in different environments which were, in reality, her habitudinary and usual places. So we do not need to find a strange or flamboyant place to use for our self-portraits. In almost all these pictures, she used a mirror to portray herself, or she used a tripod, usually a combination of the two. So you can take into consideration using these two methods, or you can use a timer. Your phone or your camera should have it. Or you can point your device directly to your body. All these methods have pros and cons, of course, but I leave it to you to explore all these methods and see what different effects they can create. Gathering inspiration from an author means studying that author, of course. And we did a bit of this watching these images from Vivian Maier. But now I suggest you consider this particular one and reproduce it in your home and create your self-portrait in the style of Vivian Maier. Be creative in this. Add something that makes it your self-portrait, but that at the same time pays a tribute to Mrs. Maier's work. And here you can see my attempt to do this exercise. Thomas Merton wrote in his book new series of contemplation. For me, to be a saint means to be myself. Therefore, the problem of sanctity and salvation is in fact the problem of finding out who I am and of discovering my true self. I couldn't find so far any self-portrait by Thomas Merton. As you know, this American Trappist monk, a writer, a photographer, a poet, accompanies us in our journey. But why didn't he ever take a picture of himself? Is it just by coincidence, or was it an intentional choice? Thomas Merton started taking pictures quite late in his life, so maybe he didn't have enough time to explore self-portraits, or maybe he simply was much more interested in the world around him than his own image. For now, this will remain a mystery for us, but pushes us to ask ourselves, how can we take a picture of our own true self? I hope with this video to invite you to explore yourself as we do meditation through the lenses of a camera, in the same way. And in doing so, I'm trying to invite you to really love yourself more and more.